Welcome to the Supreme Love Project, where you learn to love supremely so you can live supremely. This is a Power Hour. This is the place where you can get the information you need to heal the terrors in your soul and launch a revolution in your life. Get ready. Take notes. Now, here's your host, Janine Staples.
Hello, welcome everyone back to the Supreme Love Project. This is Janine Staples, and we are in another episode of the Cold Crush Teleseminar series. Welcome back. We have with us today the fantastic powerhouse Theresa Murphy. She is the founder of Murphy Life Coaching, LLC, and the CEO of the Human Resources Cafe. She's an author, a motivational speaker, and a life booster. Theresa, welcome.
Thank you so much, Janine, for having me.
You're very welcome, and we're glad to have you here. I just want to yield the floor to you for a few minutes so that you can give us an overview of what you do, what your specialty is, maybe a little bit about your backstory so we can get familiar with your expertise.
Sure thing. Well, again, I am Theresa Murphy. I am a transformation coach, and just to give some synopsis of how I got there of becoming a transformation coach, which basically I'm a certified life coach. My specialty area is transformation, so I transition women from corporate America to entrepreneurship, but more importantly, I transform minds, changing mindsets, helping women promote a change of mindset and changing their priorities. So my background, I am a domestic violence survivor, so I went through domestic violence for about 5 or 6 years in my 20s, and I ended up in a domestic violence shelter. So I survived. I call that one of the worst and horrifying experiences of my life, where I felt that I, at that point, had hit an all-time low. So I had 2 small children at the time that I went through domestic violence, and I ended up in this shelter with no money and no job and no one to actually help me. So I had basically some options, and at that point I felt like my life was basically over. And I can definitely say that I actually gave up on life. So after dealing with the domestic violence, because it was actually the father of my children that I went through the domestic violence ordeal with, and for 5 years before I told anyone, I was so embarrassed. I went in the shelter, and I stayed in the shelter for 9 days. And it was like the longest 9 days of my entire life. And I didn't see survival as an option. And so I had to start, because a lot of times I get asked, well, how did you turn that around from being so, because I was broke and broken. So financially I was broke, and then my spirit was broken. So I went through a really dark place. And so I get asked a lot about how was I able to turn that around, how was I able to change my mindset, how was I able to get up, what motivated me to change my mindset from that negative space, that dark place, to where I am today. And I started, because I knew that God needed to use me for a purpose. And even going through that dark time, I had to find what that was. So for me, I started doing a lot of meditating, and that's something I never know how to do. I didn't meditate, didn't know how to meditate. I just knew that looking at those 2 young children, I had to make a difference, not only in their lives, but get out of my situation so I can be used to make a difference in other people's lives. And that came with changing my mindset. I had to change my priorities. I had to change my way of thinking. And these are all the things, of course, that a lot of us struggle with still today. And so in getting to that place and starting to meditate and starting to read and starting to kind of ask myself, where is it that I want it to go? Where do I want my life to be like? What do I see as far as my life outside of that dark place? And kind of trying to get a clear vision on what that is. And so, and then trying to find a consistent source of motivation to help push me where I want it to be. because I knew, again, that I had a greater calling than being broke and a single parent in a domestic violence shelter. So I actually started talking to the residents there at the domestic violence shelter, and they were just like me. And I realized that they looked forward every day to talking to me, and it's like I was motivating them even in my dark place. So once I realized that I was motivating the women in this shelter, and we're all in the same place, but they looked forward every day to talking to me, and I always had these positive things to say. I didn't even believe in myself sometimes, but I was able to transform other people's lives before I even transformed my own. So I knew at that point that that was my gift and that was my talent. And so every day I would get up and we would all meet in the break room and we would have these motivational sessions, and I was always the leader of these motivational sessions. And for like 2 weeks, I did this with these ladies. And I was actually able to move out to the domestic violence shelter, and I started working again, and I was able to start living again. And so my career is in human resources. And so I've been in human resources for about 20 years now. And I went and got a job with the federal government. So I'm kind of moving things along now, and things are starting to look up for me after this domestic violence ordeal, because sometimes I think when people hear domestic violence, they think a bruise here and a bruise there. And I had almost to me, lifelong bruises. So they were physical, verbal, mental, and sexual abuse. I went through all of this for 5 years. So this is something I'm trying to overcome. So as I get back into the working force, and I think because now I've moved out of this domestic violence shelter, I've helped other women in the shelter kind of see the light of who they are, that I'm healed. However, I was not healed. So I realized at that point I suppressed a lot of my emotions and a lot of my feelings about what I went through, and I still didn't deal with them. So I started.
Yes, and Theresa, let me pause you right there, because I think I want to hear the rest of your story, but I want to pause right there for the thousands of women who are listening to us all around the world right now. That's a very, very important and significant marker to note. If women are taking notes, as I am right now, and just enraptured by your story, it is very important to remember that it is not uncommon for a woman to perform the appearance of health, to perform the appearance of a healthy soul, and actually not have a healthy soul. So when you were in that shelter and you gathered what was left of your esteem, your respect, your sense, your power, and offered it to other women so that they could feast on your knowledge, on your energy, and get themselves well, that was a service. That was a service in sisterhood, and it was a gift, and it was a benevolence that ingratiated many, many women, probably several times over, more than what you probably are aware of, and that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. However, we all need to be very clear that just because we do nurturing work, we do servant work, that we do good deeds, even when we are in our pit, that doesn't mean we're healed. It doesn't mean we're whole. Do you follow where I am going with this?
Totally.
And so let's listen to the rest of the story, but I want that to be a really clear pause right now, because there are some women listening who are performing health and performing wholeness very well with great skill, and have convinced even themselves that they don't need this message. They have convinced even themselves that they don't require a crushing of this cold, a real cold crush. You know, the disassembly of a lot of the barriers and the boundaries and the fake and falsehood, the fakeness and falsehood that we have erected around our souls. So let's listen further, but I want to put a marker in that space so that we can be really self-reflective right now and not miss the moment. Please continue.
And sure, and thank you, Jenny, for just, clarifying that, because to follow up on that, you are so right. And I think that, a lot of us don't get that, because I'm a nurturer by nature. So it's a part of my nature. It's a part of my being. That's why I was able to nurture other women and help other women, but I forgot about myself. And a lot of times you have a lot of, spiritual coaches, and you have a lot of, even therapists. I mean, I can say we nurture other folks, and we do forget about ourselves. And you're important, because unless you're whole again and you nurture yourself back to health, at some point you're going to hit another roadblock, far as your life is concerned. And so that's basically what happened to me as I pressed forward, and I was able to come out, and I thought I came out on top, and I thought I was winning at this point, and I'm saving lives and all that. I forgot to save my own self. So
that's right.
That,
so this is our wait a minute, write that down moment. That's what this is right now. Wait a minute, write that down, because so often we develop this coldness, this iciness, this detachment from emotional intimacy and emotional honesty, because we believe that lie that is to say that if we give to others, we will then be healed. That's not the way that it works.
No, it's not the way it works at all. And then I realized, and I really want to emphasize on this, that I consider myself, because I do a lot of motivational speaking nationally, and one of the topics I speak on is being a recovering fraud, because I felt at that when I realized I was a fraud, because I was out motivating lives and helping folks and nurturing people, and somehow or another, it's almost like I was pretending that the pain and the healing that I needed was non-existent.
Right.
So I got broken down really quickly, and I'm happy that, that I was enlightened that it happened a lot sooner than later, because, I got up every morning and, basically I moved forward with life. And, Janine, one day I woke up and I was at this, I worked for the federal government, so I got up every day, I went to work, I had a 9 to 5, and I literally would pray every day before I would walk in this building, where I used to work, because I had a supervisor at the time that his job was to make my job miserable, and he did an awesome job at that. But going in that job, it just wasn't fulfilling to me. So I felt like I was still missing something. And so I realized that what I was missing was I wasn't healed. So it was time for me to start peeling off my layers. So all the work that I did, it was great. I helped a lot of lives. I moved a lot of folks, but I had to start peeling off my layers to get to the core of Theresa. And I don't think I was ready at that time, because you have to go and deal with self. And I say pull all your layers off and you get naked. That's what I tell folks. And you go deal with the core of self. You are then dealing with your reality. So when people say, well, how did you figure it out that you forgot to deal with self? Well, I had a lot of behavior patterns that weren't healthy, whether they came through relationships, and not professional relationships, personal relationships, that weren't healthy. And I still surrounded myself around, I realized on a day-to-day basis, I was surrounding myself around a lot of naysayers and negative people, and people that just didn't have anything going on. So as I'm thinking, okay, I can change the world. And so I think I had the wrong concept of saving lives and forgetting to save myself, because I got broken again. So I went from domestic violence and assumed that I had rebuilt myself because I was able to nurture other folks, but I forgot to nurture myself, and I got broken again. So here we go again with this pattern. And I got broken again, and I lost my job again, because my spirit got so broken that mentally I wasn't even able to function. So I really want people to understand how important it is to make sure that you take care of self. Because whether it catches up with you now, at some point it will catch up with you if you don't take care of self. And I can't emphasize that enough. So I ended up going to therapy because I had all these broken pieces in my life I couldn't fix. And the hurtful part was I would pull it all together, Janine, when I had to go in front of folks, if I had to go to an event, if I had to go and attend something with family, I would pull it all together so no one knew. So I basically wore a mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
And And I know a lot of us there are a lot of us, out here now that's listening, probably wearing a mask, because that's what I did. And I wore a mask for years.
Yeah.
And when my spirit got broken again, I just couldn't do it anymore. And
well, let's be clear, Theresa. Let me pause you again, please. So I want to be clear. When you say that you got broken again, I want our listeners to understand what that means literally. You said you lost a job. Does that mean that you went into financial trouble? Does that mean you went into another abusive relationship? Does that mean that you lost friends? Does it mean that your family relationships were damaged? What does that literally mean?
Well, literally what it means is I went broke again because I was hanging around a group of people that I felt I had to be someone else to be a part of this group. So that's why I was saying I was consider myself a recovering fraud. So the group of people I was hanging around, they were spending all this money and they were going on all these lavish vacations. Well, I couldn't afford it. But I didn't want them to know that I could not afford it.
Sure.
So what I did is to fit in with the group, and I thought that was a part of my happiness to be able to do all these things, spend money that I really didn't have. And then I look up and I hit rock bottom again. So basically I lost my job. So I lost my home at the time. They repoed my car. And I tell people these stories because I want them to understand how important it is for the choices that we make and how important it is if you do not go and deal with self. And some of us, it's a challenge to deal with self. We can deal with people all day. You can be a people person and you can fix everybody, but you have to deal with self. And for me to get broken again, that was my second go around, and it wasn't domestic violence this time. It was financial hardship, but financial hardship that I caused. So it wasn't any action of anything but my own. So that's why I said a lot of my behavior patterns had not changed. Now a lot of the emotional piece was suppressed, but the behavior patterns weren't changed. Because for me to be able to get back on top, or so I thought, and then go and hit rock bottom again, because I lost everything all over again. And now the only difference was this time I didn't end up in the domestic violence shelter, but I did lose everything all over again. So, to the point where I actually had to go downtown in D.C. and sign up at a homeless shelter. So, this is a result of not dealing with self. And I went several years helping people before I actually hit rock bottom again. So if you ever have to be amongst a group of people that you have to pretend to be someone that you're not, definitely not healthy. Because those are not what you consider friends. And I think sometimes we'll mix that up. So I have to take all these learning experiences, Janine, and say to myself, I got to start all over again. Now, after hitting rock bottom twice, to the magnitude that I hit rock bottom, it's kind of like, how did you move forward? And again, it's all about the choices that you make. And I had to have a heart-to-heart with myself, and that's what I did. And I had to be honest with myself. Are you willing to do the work to change? Are you willing to change your mindset? Is the pain of, my current circumstances and reality more painful than making a change? So I had to sit and ask myself all these questions, and I knew, again, God needed to use me as a voice for other individuals. But this time, the difference was I had dealt with self and I had became whole again. Right. Opposed to how I did it, after my domestic violence situation.
So, yeah, this is a powerful story, and I want to bring home some ideas for our listeners, and also ask you if I'm grasping this correctly according to what I know and what my research tells me and what my experience has told me. As someone who I call myself a recovering main chick. I'm a recovering codependent. That definitely involves fraudulent behavior. It definitely involves masks. It definitely involves performances. It definitely involves detachment from self, disidentification from self. And I went through that too. I definitely had that experience. And I think that a lot of the women who are listening have that experience too. Crushing that cold and icy energy is about being, I hear you saying, Theresa, being emotionally honest. If we as women can learn to stop lying to ourselves about what we really think and how we really feel, we can change our lives, I mean, radically. And not only our day-to-day lives, like you're talking about your financial situation, but also your and my relational situation. It starts with being true, with being truthful. And what I've found is that our patriarchal society makes it very difficult for a woman to learn how to tell the truth, to learn how to just be very naked, to learn how to be honest, and not only learn it, but live it. Live in relation to your truth. There are about 1,000 different ways that we are coerced out of our truth, that we are told to neglect and challenge our truth, not accept our truth, judge our truth, be afraid, painfully afraid of our truth. And when these lessons are digested, the end result is what your life used to look like. The end result is what my life used to look like. The end result is what hundreds, thousands, millions of women's lives look like today, right now. And so when I think about your story, I think about my story, which is on my blog. It's on the SupremeLoveProject.com. It's on JanineStaples.com. We know we can find your story at TheresaMurphyInc.com so that women can get a hold of it and really mull it over. I want to make sure we nutshell our message so that we can think of 3 key ideas, 3 key questions, 3 key actions, whatever it might be, that women can hold on to, can write down, can tangibly incorporate into a plan of action to bring themselves out of a pit into a new space. Can you offer 3 ideas, 3 questions, 3 activities, 3 words, 3 somethings that can help us to really, really understand what you're talking about, which is about telling your truth?
Yeah, and the 3 words that actually come to mind for me, Janine, is rebuild, relaunch, and revive. And those are the 3 words that come to my head immediately to get the process moving forward of changing your mindset and to kill that cold crush.
Yeah. So what does that mean? To rebuild, relaunch, revive. Take us through the steps.
So to rebuild means basically on a day-to-day basis, and these are some great takeaways that I use all the time. So rebuild, you only want to use positive words, like when you're talking. You want to practice positive affirmation. So as you're starting to rebuild, these are things that you have to put in place to start to rebuild. So affirmations, what exactly are those? Well, I'm really a big advocate of affirmations. Those are positive thoughts that you write down. It can be even a Bible verse that you recite out of the Bible daily, but they need to be recited every single day until you believe them. So our affirmation may not be something that's already happening. It could be something that you're speaking into existence. It can be something that you have a vision that you see for your future. So just to be clear, when you're writing your affirmations, they are not just things that are already happened, has already taken place. They are things that you are speaking into existence. You are speaking life into these things until you actually believe them yourself. And you put them on your mirror. I used to have them on the mirror in my bathroom. You put them on your vision board. Hopefully you have one. And you put them sticky notes wherever you have to do, print them, and you put them and you recite them daily. You have to be consistent with these affirmations until you recite them, until you believe them. So that's a part of the rebuilding process. And having a heart-to-heart with self. So that's a part of the rebuild process. What does that mean, having a heart-to-heart with self? exactly self-explanatory. You have a heart-to-heart with yourself. You start to come into your truth. And that's being authentic. That's being transparent. And accepting you for exactly who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, relaunch. So when it's time to relaunch, because see, when you put all the tools and resources in place for the rebuild part, now it's time to relaunch. So you're ready to relaunch the new you. And then how do you do that? So you take a lot of the tools and the resources from the rebuilding process and you start to execute in action. So we've written things down through the rebuild process. We've had our heart to heart with ourselves, and you start to write things down in the relaunch process so you can execute in action. Because if you are transferring information from the brain to paper and you're not executing any action, you're not going to get a change. So the relaunch process is where you start to write down those goals, write down those visions. When you opposed to the rebuilding process where you're there's your thoughts of where you want to go and who you want to be. And relaunch, are you writing those things down and you're coming up with an actual plan to execute in action. So whatever those are, to change your mindset is what you want to do in the relaunch process. Now, revise. What do you do when you revise? Because now that you have went through the rebuild, the relaunch, and now you're at the revise process, you are revising your way of thinking. So that means you are revising, you are changing your priorities. Because to change your mindset, you have to change your priorities to get a different result. And so how do you do that? Well, under the revision process, it's really good, too, to start to kind of hang in a circle of folks, like-minded folks, that are kind of trying to go in the same direction that you're going, because that's going to be your motivation for you to revise. There are a lot of different networking groups that you can tap into. Actually, I have a few links on my website as well that'll be that are helpful as well. So when you revise, your entire vision at this point has changed from who you are, where you came from, and where you're going.
Right.
So those are my three: rebuild, relaunch, and revise.
Yeah, those are really powerful statements and stances. And so much of what I hear, you saying, Theresa, and I see it in my own work, is that this is work. And I want to make that clear. I want to make that clear. As a part of the Supreme Love Project, I make it, I try to be as transparent as I possibly can be in the level of investment a woman will need to make in herself in order to undo some of the damage that comes from supremacist patriarchy. Basically, that's the society that we live in that has socialized us into not believing in ourselves, not knowing who we are. Some of what we have developed as social practice, as emotional practice, as intellectual and psychological practice, undoing all that, Theresa, that takes work. It's not a snap, magical, say these 3 words 3 times and turn around in a circle kind of fix. It doesn't work like that. So when you say rebuild, relaunch, revise, I'm thinking of sustained commitment, a sustained commitment to pushing through, because in your rebuilding and your relaunching and your revising, tell me if you know, Theresa, that you're going to come up against some boundaries. You're going to meet some resistance, internal resistance and external resistance, because here's the other thing that we need to learn about a cold crush. When we are crushing this iciness, this coldness, this emotional disassociation, we are changing ourselves from the interior space that we occupy. That means our exterior space has to change too. So in this rebuild, relaunch, and revise, there are going to be people who might fall away from our lives. They won't be happy with our difference. They won't be supportive necessarily. Some people will and some might not. And preparing women for level of commitment that a woman will have to have for herself, I see that as an integral part of my work. What would you say about that?
I totally agree, Janine. I mean, because nothing is going to change without you doing the work. And it is a lot of work. It may not be physical work, but it's a lot of work mentally to even change your way of thinking. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's why I emphasize being consistent. Because see, consistency, you will get change. So, you know, if you don't do this, if you're not consistent with your new behavior, a lot of times we result back to what? We result back to our old behavior. And sometimes, you know, it is too much work. So some people think it's a lot of work. But with change and new beginnings, it's never a lot of work if you are being consistent, because after a while it starts to get easier. Now, when you get started, you're going to hit roadblocks, you're going to hit obstacles, and those things right there, those are what set us back, because we don't want to deal with the challenges. And I think one of the most, I can say for me, for dealing, you know, just throughout my career and my profession, that a lot of issues is people already have a hard time adapting to change. Whether that be your mindset, your experiences, your job, whatever the case may be, a lot of us have a hard time adapting to change. It's not that we don't want it, we're stuck, is what I say. So we have a hard time getting unstuck. But until you get unstuck, you know, you can't be unstoppable until you get unstuck. And to get unstuck, you're going to have to change your mindset. And you can talk to folks like you, Janine. We can get on, you know, several summits throughout the year. They can reach out to my office, and we will provide you all the resources and tools and the guidance that you need, but you're still going to have to do the work. So, yeah, there's no way escaping that.
Yeah, and that's where community comes in. That's where a coach comes into effect, a curriculum comes into effect. There are so many resources in the Supreme Love Project, on the Cold Crush series, even on our previous series, the Hot Help series, that are available. You know, Theresa, I'm talking now to our ladies who are listening, and maybe some gentlemen, and maybe people who are non-gender conforming. There are many, many people out here who are ready and available to assist you in the work. I want to assure our listeners, Theresa, because some of what gets learned in these series is the level of commitment that's required. Sometimes when people are passing through websites and they're not digging deep into the message of the teacher or the coach, they miss the memo that this will require some changes in mindset. It will require some changes in lifestyle. And so when people imagine, oh, well, I just need to say these positive affirmations 5 times a day for 15 days and everything's going to be different, when they get the memo that that's not really what's going to happen, that they're going to have to encounter, like you said, some obstacles, some disappointments, really learn what their pain points are, they start to get a little discouraged. But I want to encourage all of our listeners, we're here for you. There are coaches who are here for you. There are communities who are here for you. And Theresa, I want to hear from you what you think about how important it is to have a coach in a community when you're trying to crush this iciness in your soul. I don't know many people who do it alone as an individual. I just don't. What do you think?
Well, you know, Janine, I couldn't even do it alone. So I can tell you, you know, I can say firsthand, you just can't do it alone. I mean, you can attempt and start to do it alone, but a lot of times you result, again, like I said in my previous statement, you'll result back to your same actions. To be able to do it and get all the guidance and the resources and the tools that you need, I mean, to be consistent with it, and I mean to really birth a new life, I definitely would recommend you getting a coach. And that's what they're for. You know, that's what we're here for, to be able to provide that to individuals and keep them on the right track and keep some consistency and you know, and making sure that, you know, you're doing the homework, because homework comes with that as well. Because you just can't get up, unfortunately, you know, and write your affirmations down and get up every morning and recite them, and then you're going to change, because you're trying to mentally. See, it starts mentally, and you're mentally right now trying to change your mindset from a mindset that you may have had your entire life. That's no longer working for you. So definitely I recommend, you know, having a coach. And there's, now the world we live in, I think it's awesome. There's so many folks in the community now that can help you and can coach you and guide you, to becoming that new you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because when we talk about cold crash, for most women, we're talking about a tundra of iciness in the soul. It's not just a little ice box. It is, these are mountains that have been built around our soul, and that we're living in. And so a community, a coach, a curriculum are very, very important. And so I just want to encourage all of our listeners. Theresa, your story is just wonderful. It's so encouraging. I congratulate you and thank God that you made it out of that situation and that you used the situation that you were given to build this ministry, this community that you are stewarding. And I am so glad to know you. Thank you for being my guest. This has been a wonderful time. And so I want to leave you for a moment. If you have any words of encouragement or parting favors that you want to extend to our community, please bless them now.
I sure will, and thank you again, Janine. I really appreciate it. What I would like to leave, the community with is, firstly, and always listen to that inner voice. Okay, do not ignore the inner voice. And I think that's one thing that women are blessed with is an intuition. And sometimes we have to listen to it. Don't procrastinate. A lot of times we don't move forward because we don't procrastinate. Learn how to deal with fear, and that will come with probably getting you an actual coach. Because a lot of times we don't move forward because of fear. We don't know the unknown. So when you do hit roadblocks and you hit obstacles, you're going to hit them. It's a part of life, even for yourself, Janine, even for me, even at where we are now in our lives, you're going to hit them. It's about how you deal with them. Okay. So when they do arise, you don't want to stay stuck too long in a roadblock or an obstacle. It's all about how you deal with them. And more importantly, I will leave you with this. Figure out what is your why. And I think a lot of us don't know what our why is. And so I want to leave the community with that, today. Just figure out what is your why. And when you figure out what your why is, and again, coaches they definitely can help you with that tool as well if you need assistance on trying to figure out your why because you don't know what your why is. Some of us still, may not know, but figure out what your why is because that'll definitely determine what path you'll take on your journey to success. Because, success awaits all of us. So, and everybody's success is different. So everything is not successfully, it's not about money. It's not always financial. For me, success is about, being healthy, being able to spend time with my family, not having to work 80 hours a week anymore. So success, is different, for different folks and get into some of those curriculums. I have some great ones as well. As Janine mentioned, I have some great ones as well that you can actually access on my website, theresamurphyinc.com and tap into the community and get with groups of women that are doing the same things or want to do the same things that you're doing because that's going to be key. Yeah, absolutely. All brilliant advice. Theresa, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for being so transparent with your story. Everyone, please go over to TheresaMurphyInc.com and go over to the Supreme Love Project, to JanineStaples.com. Get your resources, get your fill. Make sure you crush that cold, and thank you so much for being a part of the Supreme Love Project. We will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for participating in the Supreme Love Project. We're a division of Literacy for Life, LLC. Please visit thesupremeloveproject.com for more information about our products and services. Visit JanineStaples.com for more information about our beloved founder and president. And remember, take this message to heart and build it into your body. We'll see you next time, right here. The place to make love, not war, every day of your life.